In this episode, we look to and hope to finalize and install the gauges of the ashtray gauge pod. Welcome back to this show if you're a faithful subscriber or if it's your first time. My name is Grant Tommy and this is Straight Six Fan, and welcome to part 5 of the ashtray gauge pod project for Project Low Fairmont. And in case this is your first time, a little bit about my channel. I like to focus on budget-minded, relatable, creative builds, a little something I like to call offbeat hot rodding. And while I do have the ashtray gauge pod in 3 coats of polyurethane Bombay mahogany finish, I want to take you guys back through the course of the week to show you exactly how I got here. So here we are Monday night, and just got finished sanding down a little bit of a, when I glued this thing up, it was a little out of square in the bottom, so I filled it a little bit with this plastic wood product. So yeah, ready to veneer this side, got it all sanded down. Now, last night after I uploaded the YouTube video, we did get the other 2 faces done. I just got done trimming this here tonight. So we are ready to prep it for contact cement and veneer this side. Okay, so since this veneer has already been used, I have been scuffing up the back side with a sanding sponge. And but before I go about laying contact cement on both surfaces, one of the things that I am doing is trying to figure out the best way to get the grain to continue from one face to the other. So I mean, kind of just playing around. Not that it's going to be super critical. I mean, few people will ever kind of view it from both sides, but you can see right here we've got a little darker stripe here, darker stripe here, so the way it kind of continues around the corner is great. But I will also end up eventually sanding the outside surfaces as well before I do the Bombay mahogany stain. But for now, it's time to start putting some contact cement on. Alright, so here it is Saturday, and I have the first coat on the gauge pod. According to the old Minwax can, it says to wait 6 hours between coats, so I will do that. So in the meantime, and if you caught on the Thursday live stream, of course, I was out this week for work, and one of the things that happened while I was gone, of course, we had an ice storm, but so the ice was wreaking havoc on the garage door. So I've got some repairs to do today because it pulled itself right out of the bracket. Okay, so as you can see, even though I spent time grinding off up here trying to get those ridges down, I decided it's probably my best interest to just punt that all together, and I just adjusted this bracket here so that I could come down lower, and I just reinstalled this guy down lower, and it works just great. In fact, I think I may have gotten a better seal at the bottom by doing what I did. So anyway, good to have that. Let's get back on that gauge pod. This used to be like a kick plate on the same bar that the veneer. So I made a bar back in college for furniture design workshop that I was in for a class, but it's also for my wedding. That's where that walnut veneer came from. This was like a kick plate on the front side of that, so I've got this epoxy I need to clean off the back as well. But anyway, the good news is, as I wait for this to dry, you can see the width of the old kick plate is just about perfect, and it's missing in the right direction. It's a little bit wider than this, which is great because, again, if you recall from last week, these relief cuts are going to be for trim pieces to come out this way on either side, but I'm going to make a little filler plate to fill off the remaining gap from the front face of the gauge pod to the lip of the ashtray. Okay, so I have the gauge pod mocked up in place currently. Hopefully, if not the last time, the second to last time. I'm kind of indifferent about the trim rings. Not quite sure they go alright with the dash inserts, but the chrome might be a little bit of a better look. But anyway, we will cross that bridge when we get there. But if you remember from yesterday, so the brushed aluminum plate is going to kind of trim off, cap off, fill this little gap in the front of the gauge pod, and then the side pieces that I cut. Basically, after I get this one cut to shape, it's just really just going to kind of friction fit rest in there. But then after I do that, I'll know exactly how I want to cut these sides and glue them in, because the point is I want to kind of always be able to just remove that little filler plate, so then it's easier to remove the whole gauge pod in and out, and at least that's kind of how I'm thinking of it right now. Okay, so filler piece is cut out, and that will drop in right in the little gap. Like so, and then I've got a little trim piece that will go right in that relief cut from the last episode, like that. And honestly, now I think about it, I think after I get glued in the outside trim pieces, I will be able to glue this to the bottom of that, and the way it comes in and out of the ashtray, I think it should be able to support itself. So that's going to be the objective now, get these glued on, and then once we do that, we can get to soldering. And I don't know that I'm going to get the water temp probe and the oil pressure sending unit hooked up per se today. However, I do want to test out the lights, see if the switch and the lights work. So while I do have the trim actually cut out now for the gauge pod cluster, I kind of know better, or I'm trying to protect myself against myself, and I know that if I was going to wait for it to set up with an epoxy, I probably would wind up moving it around and before it's all the way cured. So I've decided I'm going to start soldering now, and so we will get the wire management all ready and good to go, and then I can glue on the trim pieces, and then more or less we can test out whether or not I got the electronics working well. I got everything wired up, and I don't know if you saw that on the time lapse or not, but I didn't end up needing a soldering iron because I had I've crimped connections, if you will, but I did successfully burn myself on the finger because I had the soldering iron going, so that was pretty awesome. But anyway, we got everything wired up, installed, and no dice. So, however, I got to thinking, because I know I did have power at one time from the cigarette lighter, because I accidentally hit the exposed end of the wire on a piece of metal and it threw sparks, so I knew I had power from the cigarette lighter. So I just like, well, maybe I blew a fuse, you know, kind of like thinking like that. So I go to the old $4 Chilton's manual I bought, on eBay a long time ago, and it does say that the cigar lighter actually is what it's called. Nice. Is also on the same circuit as the horn. So I tried to push the horn on my car, which I know worked at one point, and no dice there. So now the only problem is that the used panel they show is for 1981 and later models. I guess I haven't tried going to the next page just to see. Let's see. But anyway, I need to now check the panel diagram they give is for I've got the old school fuses, the little glass container cylinders, and this appears to show a panel that's got the newer style, I guess, little two prong plastic guys. So anyway, I gotta do some more research here, but at least I know what's going on here. I must have just blown that fuse when I sparked that circuit. So doesn't look like we're gonna probably get the lights on today. So while the Chilton's manual showed the diagram for the 81 and up models, I did pop my head under there, and sure enough, we have a blown fuse. I don't know if you can quite see it there. You can kind of see where there's space in between. Anyway, so that's good. It's that'll be an easy fix. The fuse panel was well labeled, and it said, of course, horn/cigar on it. So yeah, the Chilton's manual said position 10 and position all that stuff. So I looked under there expecting to find numbers, but yeah, it just said the same words. And like I mentioned, there's where I burned myself with the soldering iron. So that was awesome because I didn't even use it. Alright, so there you have it. A little bit of success, a little bit of failure today, but that's alright. Still pretty pleased with the progress. Okay, so sorry, a little distracted there. I finally found this piece of aluminum that I thought I had laying around somewhere, and it turns out it's on this shelf over here as I finished the day, but this would have been much better for making the trim pieces than the time I spent. But as you just saw, I just glued that up, so I guess chalk that up for another failure. Alright, whatever. So that's this episode. I got two questions for you guys. First off, if you remember seeing my budget rules episode somewhere over there, I laid out sort of what I would count towards and what I wouldn't count towards the budget. And so, but I want to throw this one at you guys because it's kind of like an in-betweener. So I bought three foam brushes, and I only used two of them, for applying the stain as well as applying the contact cement on the veneer. The rule had always been, if I bought something that's like a consumable like that, if I go through it 100%, it counts towards the budget. If it's something like say the contact cement, since I would have leftovers, I wouldn't count it towards, because I wouldn't count that towards the budget because I could always use that later on in my shop, and it's material that stays. So let me know what you think. Should I count those two brushes towards the budget, or should I not? Oh, and speaking of budget, the rocker switch, since I didn't do that last episode, I figured this episode I'd give you guys that update. So as we last gave you a budget update, we were at $1,636.89. That rocker switch was like $4.99, so after tax it was $5.53. That brings the budget from the original $4,000 down to $1,631.36. So there's the update on that. Second question I had for you guys that I wanted to get your feedback on. What do you think of the trim rings? Should I leave them on or off? The aluminum, obviously in color, looks better than the chrome, but I think the proportion of just the original chrome looks better on the pod. So leave your comments below for one of those two questions or both, or tell me whatever you want to tell me about this episode, because it's probably pretty long by this point. So of course, should I count the brushes towards the budget, as well as should I put the aluminum trim rings on or leave them off? If you want a straight 6-fan Pistons tee, there's a link in the description below to my Spreadshirt store. Otherwise, I think that's going to do it for this episode. get ready for my new end screen, which you're probably seeing right now, but I'll do it for this episode. And until next time, peace out.